Fintech Chatter, brought to you by Tier 1 People, leaders in Fintech executive search. Hello and welcome to episode 106 of Fintech Chatter, the show where I invite leaders from the fintech community to connect and share their stories and insights on entrepreneurship, growing the business, hiring, raising capital, and all of the other stuff that goes on in between. And of course, the occasional bit of gossip and chat. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins, and in 2022, we're aiming to bring you 50 of Australia's up-and-coming fintechs. So show your support for the channel by giving us a follow and a 5-star review. You can also check out the show on our YouTube channel, Fintech Chatter TV. Now on to today's guests. I'm joined by two co-founders today, Kinsey and David Anderson of Karta. Karta aims to disrupt the $1 trillion opportunity that is gift cards. It doesn't sound very sexy for a fintech, but when I tell you that this is a huge opportunity where there's been zero innovation since the industry began in the mid-90s, then I'm sure you'd agree there's huge upside here. This isn't David and Claire's first time at being fintech founders, so we have a chat about that dreaded F-word failure, and we also talk about the dynamics that are super important for a successful founding partnership. This is a really great show with a lot of good insights, so I really hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the interview. Well, Dave, Claire, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
David, I'm going to start this conversation going back 12 months ago. We were at Intersect, and I was kind of almost commiserating. And you kind of, you told me not to, just to hold off on those commiserations. So first of all, I'm delighted to have you on the show 12 months, but 11 months from that point, where now we're talking about Karta and some really, I guess, great news and some great achievements in this last 11 months. But before we go into that, do you want to maybe just give a little bit of a backstory as to the Karta business and kind of how you got to where you are today?
Yes, a very good question. I think best way to take it is probably a step before Karta, when we first met in the plastic days. So I guess one of the things when you get into a startup is you never want to be in a position where it doesn't make it to where you want to get. Unfortunately, we're in that position. Getting involved in another startup very close to it, it was always something that played heavy on my mind. One, because you've raised investor funds in a business that didn't succeed, and everything along those lines. But then you read the books, Silicon Valley, people talk about it. That's the culture. That's what brings it up. And I think the truest validation of this for me is when we started the new venture, and the existing investors, were the first ones, some of them that wanted to write checks for the new one. Really solidifies, I think, how far the startup scene has grown in Australia and just how much people are willing to back innovation. They know not everything's going to land, but just like ensuring that people always have that opportunity and being there for it, it's quite exciting to see.
Awesome. Now, Claire, you said in the intro there that the gift card industry is a $1 trillion opportunity. I've got to be honest, when I kind of first heard about gift cards, I wasn't, I certainly didn't have that number in mind as to the size of the opportunity. And it wasn't really something that I thought, hey, well, this is going to be a real hotbed for innovation. So do you want to tell us really about, give us some background around the problem that you're solving for and, kind of some context around the size of the opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, there's two big factors at play. The industry is ripe for disruption. I think everyone has had a time where come Christmas time, you're not clear on what to buy someone. You run out of time. And what do? You pull out the handy Bunnings or the My plastic gift card and you put it into a card and there you go. There's the gift done. Doesn't really hit the mark for the person receiving it possibly. And it certainly doesn't hit the mark in terms of a usage perspective for the customer, the end user, because we know that breakage is a key sort of industry norm, where people just commonly forget to use that card because it's independent of, say, their credit card or their debit card or their buy now, pay later account. And so really what we're looking to do is to actually have it become much more of a mainstream use of a wallet at the checkout, whether it be in store or online. And that is by bringing it into the 22nd century now almost, or 21st century, and actually have it tokenized in your wallet. And that is something that doesn't exist commonly as much as you'd think today. And the other thing is with COVID, obviously people's consumers' attitudes have changed. So we know that in the last 2 years, 9 out of 10 Australians have either given or received a gift card. And when you hold a gift card, another really interesting fact is on average, when you go into the store and use that card, you can spend on average up to 38% more than you would if you were actually using any other payment form. So we know that gift cards work for the consumer as well as the business under the right circumstances. And that's where Karta comes in, because what we want to do is actually remove the friction for both the business and the merchant by enabling a much more cohesive, ubiquitous experience that's digital first. And that's where really it is about getting that opportunity to capture our fair share or unfair share of the global opportunity that exists today.
So you talked there, David, just before around convincing the founders of Plastic in to get involved in Karta. What was the thing that they heard when you pitched that got them to kind of other than investing in yourself and Claire again to really get on board and to get them excited?
Well,
is that a stupid question when you say $1 trillion?
I think everyone gets excited about $1 trillion. I think just for absolute clarity, we raised completely independent funds. Like when you had a handful of people want to jump in and not have other people get in, it just didn't seem right to be able to do it that way. So all funds were raised in complete isolation, complete new entity and everything along those lines. But you're 100% right. I think one of the challenges of Plastic is we were doing something very new and we were doing so many different things at once, which we needed to do for that concept. It was like 10 foot deep rather than 1 foot deep.
Yeah.
The beauty of gift cards, like Claire said, everyone knows what a gift card is. The second you tell someone you're solving a problem and they already know what exists in the market, and the fact that they've already had salt rubbed in the wound, because everyone's got a gift card that's expired on them. So like everyone knows what the bad taste of it is, showing them there's a better way to do it, and then like the commercial benefits to run with it as well. It was quite a very easy journey compared to other bits and pieces I've been on. So raising the angel round, it was quite exciting, like literally just hitting up the angel list that Airtree put together, the Open VC one, which is an amazing resource. It's a scary world when like you're sending blank emails to people you've never met and they're committing like 25 to 50K back just seeing like an 8-page deck. Some people wanting to have a Zoom, but I think, again, it just shows like how optimistic people are on the tech culture in this country. And then getting to build the team once you get the initial funds in to get to that point.
That's a really great point that you raised there, Dave, because, the investment community in Australia, it gets a real hammering. We often hear that, they're risk averse. They only want to invest in property and sure bets. And yet the experience that you just talked about seems to very much contradict that. What do you think has been the kind of the event or the catalyst for that change in mentality? And I guess for now to see early stage ideas like yours to be so heavily in kind of such interest in, but also heavily invested in as well.
There's two parts to that solution. I think being second-time founder and going through it, you've got the benefit of hindsight. The one thing that everyone always says, but I think it gets overlooked, is like whatever you know, forget about it and work out how to sell what you're doing to a 5-year-old. If you can't tell a kid what you're doing and they don't understand it succinctly, investors won't. Because from an investor's perspective, you've looked at this for who knows how long. It could be 6 months, it could be 2 years, 10 years. You could have a PhD, a thesis on it. And investors likely never heard about what you're doing before. They just want to be able to understand the opportunity as succinctly as possible. to be able to, one, work out, is this something that they think makes sense? Is there going to be sufficient return relative to risk and all that type of gear? But I think the other thing is hunting in the right part of the woods, right? Because like I love fishing. So if you don't get a bite, you don't stay there the whole day. You move on to catch the fish. And I think knowing where you're at the stage of the business, if it's not much more than the deck and the concept and the relationships, you need to be hunting around at the angel level. That might be friends and family. It might be startup founders that have had experience. But if you're going straight to the VCs, you're not at the level they're expecting. And if you don't have the right connections, again, like that's Australia is a country that's built on home loans and steel, which I think the risk aversion comes from in a lot of senses. But again, if you look in the right avenues, and this is like so much credit to the guys that created the open VC networks and that to help build that ecosystem, it's an absolutely wonderful starting point.
Awesome. Now, Claire, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the problem, because just the other day I kind of experienced some of the things that you've just touched on. My boy, who's 9, gets a Google Play voucher that he wants to use for Roblox, and I think about 3 hours later and 5 different kind of transactions later, we managed to get him what he wanted. And I've got to say, it was a really painful experience, a really bad user experience as well. What is it that you kind of Karta can see as the areas that they can really put together a slick experience, and one that we've become kind of accustomed to on our everyday banking and other transactions that we go through?
Yeah, I think there's a few factors that really we've honed in on at Karta to really sort of capitalize on the changing consumer behaviors. So obviously COVID's driven a lot more use of QR codes. So that's something we're absolutely baking into the consumer experience as we build out and scale. So like scanning using your phone is such a common practice. And yes, there's debate about whether that will stay long-term or not. But I think you can increasingly see more and more businesses taking that advantage of what's here in this point of time to capitalize on how to actually scale for growth. So, the Super Bowl ad with that success seen in that, where there was like 800,000 users, I think, from the Coinbase promotion. Great example of just very simple marketing, taking a point of time and capitalizing on that. We're doing the same at Karta. The other thing is adding the card to your mobile wallet. So again, the behavior that is already embedded for so many people, again, embedded and accelerated through COVID, where cash is no longer king. And we obviously want to scan and use our watch or our phone at the point of sale. We're taking advantage of that. The other thing that's like quite distinct for Karta that is actually quite unique in the market is we also want to show transparency. So coming back to the fact that we believe a lot of users that have gift cards today don't like to remember when it's actually used because they actually can't remember. I don't know if you've had this experience, Dexter. I have. It still embarrasses me. I hate asking at the point of sale how much is remaining on that gift card. It's like, do I want to ask? Do I not want to ask, etc. We provide that transparency to actually show you what all your transactions are, and then you can see the remaining element of what's left. And that also will take away that friction that exists today that drives so much breakage in the industry.
Yeah.
One thing to just add quickly, Dexter, as Claire mentioned, breakage there. So that's like the term in the industry for when gift cards are expired, for anyone doesn't know. I think the thing that is very important to call out, because people look at gift cards and they go, wow, what a boring industry type of thing. They're the pegs in on the cards on the pegs at Woolies and Coles. Like that's not too flash. And it's wonderful because it means there's not a lot of competition. But the thing that is overwhelming about this industry is that it's actually built on breakage. If it wasn't for the gift cards expiring, the industry as it is today actually wouldn't be sustainable in turnover. So the big thing that we're doing is we've built a platform that actually gets rid of the need for breakage, because as Claire said, like ubiquity from a merchant and consumer experience is like where the opportunity in the world is here. Because if you go into the shops to buy a pizza or something like that, you pull your MasterCard or your Amex out, you know what you do with it. If you've got a gift card, you don't know if you've got to download an app, if you've got to swipe a piece of plastic, how to use it. It's very cumbersome. Having that ubiquitous experience where gift cards are the same from a global perspective, just like any payment card is, that's what we're doing.
And one of the frustrations that I have with gift cards is I think I must have like about 50 or 60 of them that have got 30 cents, dollar on. What's is there a way that you'd be able to kind of consolidate the gift cards that you've got to get a kind of fixed amount and be able to then, also, I've got some gift cards where I can only spend them at Rebel Sports and Myers, and there's a kind of limited places where I can spend. Would you see an opportunity where you could kind of consolidate everything, put it together, and then go and transfer that onto another gift card or spend it somewhere where you wanted to spend it?
Look, I think that there's a massive opportunity there for sure. Mm-hmm. I think where we're playing and what Karta's goal is like, I know this is cliched and everyone in the B2B world uses it, like we're the plumbing or we're the train tracks type of thing. Our goal is to have like the best platform in the world so that people who have aspirations and goals to build consumer-facing propositions like yourself have the resources to do it that just don't exist right now. And that's what we're looking to do.
Awesome. Now, you talked about the investors before. There was a pretty notable investor as well in Commonwealth Bank. Can you tell us a little bit about that relationship?
Yeah, go for it.
So I think it's sort of an interesting but a wonderful partnership in the fact that we've got Australia's largest bank, such a well-known brand with more than 625,000 merchants in their ecosystem and over 9 million retail bankers that actually go in every day. I think on active, there's active 6 million users every day that go into their app. So a massively huge, wonderful distribution partnership opportunity from us in our perspective of what we could actually gain from that. What they saw in us was the ability to drive this disruption at scale fast. And it was a marriage that worked. And so really in terms of that relationship, we got an introduction. But what was really telling was the speed at which we were both able to move to actually come to this mutually favourable outcome. So in under 2 months from our initial conversation, we were announcing to market the strategic partnership that we had undertook.
So are you able to share with us the valuation that you got, or?
I think right now there's just no benefit for us to be doing that. I think we try to fly under the radar as much as possible. I think the less people know invested in the gift card space, maybe the less people that will compete with us. So for now, we might be a little bit tight-lipped on it.
I don't blame you. It's actually quite refreshing to hear a founder say that and not kind of sing from the rooftops whenever they get an investment. So I'm sure it makes you stand out even more, Dave.
So it's not working how we want it to do.
Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask you both is this is the first kind of, video interview that we've done where we've got two co-founders being interviewed at the same time. I think it kind of makes for a nice dynamic to talk about something that I don't think we talk about enough in the community, which is the importance of getting the right kind of match, not just in terms of skills but personality and values and all of those things. And I think what really kind of strikes me about having you both on the show is that this is now the second time around that you've kind of co-founded a business. What is it that kind of, attracted, or brought you together in the first place? And then what's been the thing that got you to come back?
It's probably your story to tell.
Okay. So I'm not sure for the audience, but my background is one in corporate financial services. So I like to say I'm a recovering corporaholic. So I spent 15 years at American Express, and in my last final 2 years there, I actually met Dave. I was sort of focusing on the small and medium businesses in Australia, and Dave and his partners brought a lot of experience into that space, and we were undertaking a partnership of sorts during our time there. That's how I got to know Dave. It wasn't until I'd made the decision to actually do something different that this opportunity to work together came about. So that's really organically what truly happened. Yeah. And I remember saying to you, okay, I'm in the week before COVID hit. So it was just like one of those timing pieces that, you think back and you go, oh my goodness, what have I done? But actually I honestly think is a core reason why we are here today. Things happen for a reason. And I think coming back to your original question of, almost like how it can work, I think we had to have that trust. We had to get to know each other in our darkest moments, when the pressure was truly against us, when our backs were to the wall, and when the worst did happen. And, from that came a realization that, if the worst had happened and we got through that intact, what could happen in much more favorable circumstances? Yeah. And that's where we find ourselves today.
Yeah. What's interesting, Claire, is, when I look at your background, typically, if I were to look at the market, we got data to kind of back this up. When people make that move where they've spent, significant time in a large corporate, and then they move to a business that was as early stage startup like the one that you went to, 9 out of 10 people leave within the first 6 months. It doesn't work out.
Yeah.
What would you say, kind of were the qualities that you brought, or the experiences that you brought to the startup world that made sure that you were kind of the 10%, not the 90%, who kind of has a try, but then goes, what, I'm kind of going to go back to the safety of corporate world?
Yeah, I think it's something that's been inherent in me for a long time, and that's that inherent itch to disrupt or drive innovation. So, I look back on reflection where I wasn't actually consciously aware, but through subconscious actions, it became really clear to me that, the path I was taking may not be the path for my second half of my career, so to speak, because I increasingly felt like I was missing out on opportunities to do something that actually brought me the energy and the joy that I find myself in having today. So, it's one of those things where when it comes from the subconscious into the conscious, then it becomes a choice of, are you actually going to have that courage to take the jump? And once you've jumped, then once times get tough, as they inevitably do you stick it out? And I think that's the thing that I just look at some correlations in my personal life, some of the people that, mean a lot to me in my life. And I look at one of those resilience or grit, all of those common sayings that are quite common these days is something that on reflection has been sort of a theme in my life. And so therefore I stick it out when it's not a perfect day or when it hasn't turned out the way it has. And I think part of that comes down to the people you work with. Some of it comes down to your inherent traits, but some of it also comes down to your own decision to actually decide to evolve and grow. And that growth has always been something that's been an inner driver in me.
When you kind of look back at those two periods, I guess the first time, the first period being the one where you were, trying to make the decision, trying to make the leap. And then the other situation being the one where you've made the leap, but then it's not quite going to plan, and you know that you've got to stick in there. Which one would you say was the hardest decision for you to make?
In all honesty and reflection, it was probably the year before I did make the decision to leave. A lot of people don't know this, but I actually hired a coach. I knew in my mind and in my heart that it was time for me to do something different, but I didn't feel strong enough to do that. So I actually hired a coach for a year where we worked on that stuff for me, and it was about how I was going to get prepared to do that and get comfortable and accept that I didn't know the path before me and how it was going to go, what it could look like and how it could work. So it was a lot of inner transformation that was required to do, so that then by the time it actually happened, I was actually in a very good place where it happened quite easily for me because of my prep. But look, that's just my own personal experience. It might not fit for everyone, but, some people are born this way and just have that fearlessness within them.
I don't think anybody's born that way, to be honest.
But for me personally, I also have a small family. I've got 2 daughters, and there was a lot of stuff I had to resolve within, letting go of some expectations on myself and my family, and then just being at peace enough to do it. And that's what the journey I took, the path less traveled. But at the moment, I'm loving it.
I think one of the kind of, there's a lot of common denominators that I see between people that I have on the show that I interview and the people that I meet, and the people in my network. And I think, what really is kind of very reassuring is that everybody's been on that same journey, Claire. And I think everybody said, look, the toughest thing was actually taking the leap. And that uncertainty. Once you're in it, not suggesting it's easy, but you're there, right? You kind of, you'll do whatever it takes, to try and make it work and to kind of keep going. So I think that's, and the perception tends to be, externally that, you always think everybody's kind of got this natural gift, or they were born that way. And I think the reality is that we've all evolved, and we've taken choices, and you've taken some very clear choices and had very clear strategies around, hey, how am I going to actually make this work? And I think this is something that we tend to kind of really overlook in the startup world. It's kind of all glorified, and it's kind of the alpha male. I get up at 5 a.m. and I meditate, and then I do this, and I listen to 30 podcasts, and I read 50 books a month and all this stuff, and say, well, who actually does that? I don't know many people who do. Right? But it's kind of there's so many different characters, I think, with it that make up this ecosystem. And yet there only seems to be ever one story or narrative that gets out there, which is the wake up at 5 a.m., work out, do all this stuff, right? And say, I've got 2 kids, I'm running a business. I go, it's like, when am I going to do all that stuff?
I agree. And I think that's also that diversity in experience, but also attributes and personalities that can still come to a successful outcome is really important to apply to the culture. And I think that's something Dave and I are really passionate about too, bringing our authentic selves into the culture, but also bringing people around. Sometimes we joke and say the misfits are this is where it's at if you're a misfit and you want to have a home, because I think it's really important to say what got people to success before, including ourselves, is not what the future could be. And that's what change is all about.
So first time around, things didn't quite go to plan. Claire, I remember chasing you like 3 or 4 times for opportunities that I had with my clients. And then Dave, we caught up, a year ago. Karta was, at its kind of very early inception, and we were kind of, we were chatting about that. And then you and Claire get back together again. What was it that made you reach out to Claire and say, hey, look, we're kind of, I'm looking at round 2. Do you want to get on board?
I think there's never any doubt it was going to happen type of thing. It was just like working out how to do it. I think the answering the question that you didn't ask type of thing, I think is more like, why do we work together and how do we work together? I think most people, we probably confuse them in so many ways, how we get things done, how we do it. I think by title, CEO, COO type of thing, I think the titles are really meaningless. Yeah. One of the frustrations that a lot of the staff have is like pretty much everything we do together type of thing. It's not like someone's arms and legs. It's literally like left arm, right arm, working out how to do it. And it's something that I've never had before. Always in my life, it's just like going out and doing things your own way, making it work, getting the results. But I think when you find that person that I think brings so much to the table, where even if you wanted to spend all your time doing it, you couldn't even do it 50% as good. And they're every bit as passionate as you. Like you literally wonder, like, how did you find this person? I think it's just everything you do, you got to work out how to move it forward. Yeah. And I think the results show for themselves. Don't get me wrong, we fight like absolute crazy. So it's that's just like part of the game. But I think just shows the trust that you got there when you can actually have real conversation and break it down and get to where you need to.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you shared that, Dave, because I think, the kind of perceptions tend to be that, everybody has to get on, you're being negative if you pull stuff down. And I've found that in these types of environments, like it's a bit like, I say this all the time, but it is like being a parent. There's a mirror and you look at it and you look at the business, and everything that you see in yourself kind of is reflected back in that business. And so, there's nowhere where you can kind of gloss things over. You have to just tackle the issues. You have to deal with them. You can't just, put your head in the sand and kind of hope, we'll be positive and everything will work out. And there's going to be tension, and that tension, it kind of has to be addressed. Otherwise it manifests itself in a bad culture and toxicity and all these other things as well. What would you say that, Claire, if you were to look at the kind of partnership that you've got skills wise, where's the, where do you bring it where you kind of get synergies rather than just kind of complementing each other?
I think like it's being very self-aware about where our true strengths lie and when we can act independent versus actually we stay partnered up. And we've tried different versions of that, and we feel like we're starting to get to that combination where it's starting to work well as we scale. I think at the end of the day, Dave's brain and his vision, he is that true sort of external CEO that can see everything and how it needs to be. And then I intuitively know how to make it happen. So it's like we stay in our lanes, but that doesn't mean that we always do. So it's one of those things where sometimes, again, it comes into either conscious or subconscious communication where we just know our bias for action is what unites us, our curiosity and our desire to disrupt, but also to be very authentic and heart-based, I think is two things that also connect us. And I think that's all it is. It's just like recognizing the fact we're human at the end of the day, but look, we're on this journey. And I think, both of us love the book Shoe Dog. Is that the one? Yeah. And just like there's a saying at the end, which is it's just being on the journey and having that experience. That's what it is a lot of the time. It's not about the external pieces. It's about the path that you're taking and actually the growth that you're getting as a result of that. So there's just a lot of synergies, but also a lot of complementary differences and strengths.
How does that then kind of manifest itself towards a culture and a values and behaviors and all those things that are kind of really important in instilling, or kind of getting out there as you start to grow and scale the business?
It's very good question. Like Claire can talk to the values a lot better than me. I think that the simple way I answer it, right, is if you had 100 Dave Andersons in the organization or 100 Claire Kinseys, you're walking off the cliff like lemmings, not because you can't do what you need to do, but you just don't have that person questioning you. Yeah. And I think our job at the where we sit in the business, for us, it's really just being the glue and making sure everyone knows what we're doing and how to do it. So for me, I get more comfort when we've actually got more people that challenge us, that need to understand why we're doing, to see it inside out, that give us a different perspective to see at, rather than people that just want to act as cheerleaders and like carry it on. I think that's where we get a ton of value. But specific on the values, you're probably better to talk to that.
Yeah, I'm going to take the opportunity to call out our head of people and culture, who's been an amazing third person to really, truly sort of, understand how we think and feel without us always having to articulate it, and then leading through demonstrating and in action that towards the wider group. So that glue extension is via our head of people and culture. And I just wanted to say that, one of our best hires this year has been that role.
Do you mind me kind of asking just, and this isn't to interrupt, but this is a really important point. So how many people is the business now?
We're currently at 35 and we're still recruiting daily. So we'll look to grow that pretty quickly.
Why I wanted to ask that question is, we've got over 5 years of data now where we've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of founders, analyzed the market, looked at things like retention rates, staff turnover, all of those things. And one of the kind of startling pieces of data that's come out is that if a business, a fintech startup, doesn't have a dedicated HR professional within the first 30 hires, their staff turnover is double that than a business that did. And so it's great to get firsthand, rather than just me sharing data and analysis, like, to hear from somebody firsthand, hey, this is why this is really important.
Yeah, to give you context for why I firmly believe that too, Dexter, I took your post, I shared it to our new head of people and culture, because upon announcing the CommBank strategic partnership, our first hire was that head of people and culture. That was our top priority. Awesome. And I think it was employee number 12, our head of people and culture. And so I remember sending it to Marie, our head of people and culture, and saying, Dexter said, we're right. But no, in all honesty, it's true. Like, we need to have someone that helps build the next generation of leaders through the company. Success for us is a global company at scale in the thousands. We are not able to actually enable that. Yeah. We need the next generation to do that. And so Marie is our arms and legs that makes it happen for us. And she's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah. And look, it is actually, although it's not kind of seen as one, it's a profession as important as it is having a qualified accountant being your CFO, right? It's like, this is, we keep saying that people are our most important asset, and yet it's the one area where I think, most founders pay the least amount of, kind of importance to when it comes to those hires. And we've seen people get funding, right? And they go out and hire a chief of staff, and they still haven't got a head of people and culture or a chief people officer. And you're thinking, what? It's crazy. Like, it is insane. So to hear that, you guys are following that path, and it's kind of, it's having the benefits as well. I think it's great that, all of the information that we're able to gather and the people that we get on the show kind of now starts to manifest itself in, what this next wave of fintech startups are doing, and, kind of really fast track them. It's fantastic to hear.
Great.
Now, I wanted to talk a little more broadly, David, about fintech and the industry here, and your kind of observations as to where we're at globally, but also I guess where the ecosystem is right now. So I guess the first question for you is, other than Karta, which fintech or which area of fintech has got you most excited right now?
I look at Stripe as a business, and I don't think anything compares to that. Like valuation, all that type of, to raise it aside, I think you got the two founders there. They just wake up every single day saying, how can we give our customers more and more and more? And you got to look at their product set. It's just out of this world. You got businesses like Google. They're like, everyone knows what Google is. My mother-in-law, like that's my test for tech. If my mother-in-law uses it, it's ubiquitous. Yeah. But when you look at Google, right, they've had so many different products they've launched. Some of them work, some of them don't work. But you look at Stripe and they just, I don't know if they got the crystal ball or they just don't advocate what they're doing that doesn't work. It's just they hit the mark every time. And I think the thing that is so sensational about them is everything they do enables, like the Stripe Atlas product, where anyone can go into America and set up and incorporate easily, reducing the friction where you would have had to hit up lawyers or have severe tax implications. The Stripe billing, it's Stripe issuing, it's just amazing. And they just keep turning and turning it over. Because one of the things that Claire and I are always saying is like, this is the vision we've got right now. Like there's no way in 5 years this is still what we're going to be doing. Yeah. Like how do we build that? So we've got the team underneath coming up with the ideas because we know it's not going to be us. Yeah. I can't think of a company that's done it better than them. They're just amazing.
I think this is kind of testament to yourself and Claire, right? Is that there really aren't many low-hanging fruit left in fintech, right? Maybe you talk about superannuation, but the competition there is, it's just, we talked about the big four banks maybe being a little bit difficult to deal with, but the superannuation firms, I mean, they've got a stranglehold on the big four banks, right? So it's, I mean, the power there that you're trying to disrupt, it's just almost impossible to do. Whereas gift cards, nobody cares about them, right? Like, so you just don't, right? It's not that you wouldn't go, oh, gift cards. And then when you hear it's $1 trillion opportunity, and there's so much that can be done so easily where, you don't even have to invent the technology. The technology's already there. You can bring it across and then start to innovate on top of that. I think it's just a really great strategy by the pair of you. And as you've pointed out, Dave, I mean, it's like it's the segue or the door opener to then all of this other stuff, just like what Stripe have done, where, they start off with making payments easy with a line of code, but now it's this whole other thing, right? It's amazing. When you kind of look, Claire, and you see what's happening out there, what is it that gets you kind of really excited and you think, hey, I'm getting inspired for where we can take Karta?
I think, honestly, for me, it comes through people and relationships, but also interactions. So when you hear an inspiring story or you see something where the underdog has actually delivered, I think that's really what energizes me. I think some people are always very good at selling their potential. This, in all honesty, this isn't something that comes naturally to me. So when I hear or see people that don't fit the mold, and I think an example is it John, the Stripe co-founder? We were watching a video from him. He's not the typical Silicon Valley guy, and yet look at his success, look at his authenticity come through, and he's he's obviously got one of the smartest brains. I look at that and feel inspired because it's not the textbook story that you referred to earlier, the one trick pony of this is the journey to go. That's what brings me energy, that diversity of experience and the path less traveled. It doesn't have to be a straight linear line every time.
So somebody who I guess, I say fairly new, it's been a couple of years now that you've been in the fintech startup space, Claire. Like what's your kind of, observation or your feeling around, where we're at in terms of being an ecosystem that can, really compete on a global scale?
Absolutely. I think there's no doubt. It's just really a matter of how many more people want to get on and have the strength to actually get into the arena and actually see where it goes. Success comes in many forms, obviously, in terms of, whether you're going to be the $1 billion next unicorn, etc. But, I mean, you've only got to look at the last 2 years where you've seen brands like Mr. Young come up and you've seen Scala Pay and all these other amazing startups that have actually just hit that out of the ballpark very quickly on models that, again, not many people would have foreseen is actually the path forward. So, there's no doubt at all that Australia can take a big, significant role in the global stage and continue to do things better and better. And
we're starting to see a lot more female participation as well in this next wave of fintech startups. I think this is now the fifth interview that we've done. We've had 2 guys and four ladies on the show. What is it that you think is now kind of that change or that shift that now has so many females now starting to kind of take that first step and leap and taking that risk?
I think there's a number of factors. I mean, the last 3 years globally, there's been a shift everywhere, personally and professionally, for so many people. And I think it took, Black Lives Matter as in a global pandemic for people to sort of go, actually, it's time for real change, not just sort of superficial change. And I think that's coming through in all walks of life now. And this is just one aspect of that. I think, at the end of the day, that sort of uniqueness and bringing that new version is actually more and more accepted than the old way. I actually think it's harder for people that are working on a more traditional model now to actually be accepted. So it's just it's a point in time where a lot of people are actually capitalizing on the fact that there's a different environment and people are much more open and accepting of diversity and difference.
I've got a 10-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. They both listen to the podcast. And their understanding or their perception of an entrepreneur is somebody like yourself.
That's lovely.
It's awesome, right? It's like, and so I think this is the kind of real key is that we're changing the ingrained perception that society that when I grew up as to what an entrepreneur was is their perception now is very different.
Yeah, and Dave has 2 daughters, so we talk about this a lot. Like we want to be the change for our daughters.
Yeah,
this is the enabler for them to not have to fight for a place, a seat at the table the way others have before them, and that's just progress. Yeah,
and look, sometimes if you're a guy and you say that, you get slapped over the face for saying, "Oh, well, you only care because you got a daughter," and it's no. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to empathize. And say, look, I'm not a woman. I don't understand how women feel. I don't understand what you've gone through, but look, here's a way for me to try and connect and show that I actually care about fixing this and solving this problem. And I'm, emotionally and personally invested in it. And I think it's kind of great to see now that we're seeing, the kind of conversations are now evolving from, this almost like, one or the other and these kind of binary discussions to now it being around, hey, well, here's the examples. And it's more through inspiration that I think people are kind of seeing the examples and then getting involved. And of course the knowledge bank that we've got now in ours is just it's kind of exponentially increasing to whereby you guys being a perfect example is you go and you kind of do the first try and it doesn't work out and you can very quickly get back on the bike and move at a much quicker pace second time around as well because of not only what you've experienced, but the knowledge that's out there and also the lack of fear that, hey, well, there's no stigma now attached to having something not work out first time round.
Yeah, I think that's the only reason we're sitting here, right? Like the fact that we just keep going, like, and all the things that we're doing right now, like we've made wrong decisions with bringing on some wrong people and all that type of stuff. That's normal. But I think we just keep moving, and like we never let anything get in the way and stop, because, like the only thing that will stop you is stopping.
Yeah.
That's what makes it all possible.
That's awesome. It's such a, it is such an inspiring kind of story as well, right? That, we kind of like to always kind of put the unicorns on the pedestal, but that's not the reality for 99% of us who are, out there every day working it hard. And hey, if you can get that, that's fantastic. But I think there's also another way to look at it, that, kind of, small successes, building a business that, is valued at $100 million. I mean, that would have been a huge thing 5-10 years ago, and it's kind of now, unless it's valued at a few billion, we almost beat ourselves up that it's somehow we failed. So I think the kind of context that we've got as well around, all these other, what success actually is and what it should look like is, again, it's all down to the individual. And the more that we have different people participating in this ecosystem, I think the more that kind of, everything gets normalized rather than, we have this one single narrative.
Agree.
Now, before we wrap up, wanted to talk about what we can expect over this next 12 months from Karta. What's, got anything exciting planned?
Well, so we say that like we're Australian born and that's where we live type of thing. It's our DNA, but what we're looking to do is build the world's biggest gift card network. So that doesn't happen just in Sydney, Australia. So we're just finalising our plans to launch in the UK and New Zealand, and those markets should be running in the coming months, which is quite exciting. Massive amount of work to the team that just, it's amazing what our team does for us, but they've just managed to do that all while everything's happening locally. And we're just getting in the very early stages to move into the US as well. So we can obviously take that market, because if you win America, the rest of the world will follow. Early discussions for Northern Asia and all of those type of things as well. But the thing that's firmly on our mind right now is come Christmas, being live in Australia, New Zealand, UK and the USA.
Awesome. And Claire, what's got you excited for this next 12 months?
I think it's just delivering on our promise is what we say every day, is what our core focus is now. We've got CommBank believing in us through our strategic partnership. We've got another strategic partnership with MasterCard. We have already big established companies that look at what we can deliver and say, yes, we believe that that's it. So the credibility is there. Now we've got to deliver on our promise. So that's all it is, day in, day out, coming back to attracting, retaining top talent, presenting our North Vision all the time, our North Star, and making sure that we actually just can actually make this happen now. So lots of exciting things to come.
Well, congratulations on this last kind of 10, 11 months. Really amazing what you've both managed to pull off, and really exciting for the future as well. We're listened to in over 40 countries. So first of all, Claire, we've got some amazing talent that listens to and tunes into this show. If they're interested in jumping aboard the Karta rocket ship, where's the best place for them to go?
So karta.com.au. We have a jobs board as well, so please get in touch that way. I won't share my personal email address, but I'm happy to do that as a fast follow if I need to.
Awesome. And David, we've also got a lot of people who could be potential clients or partners of Karta. Where can they get in touch if they want to find out more about how you operate and potentially becoming a client?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of the big things for us is democratizing this technology to everyone. The cost to enter this is astronomical prior to like our technology. Hit us up on the website. There's a contact us form. We've got Ollie in our BT team that will get back to anyone who reaches out. The more businesses that we can support to offer gift cards to their customers, the better.
And you can connect with me, Dexter Cousins, on LinkedIn and Twitter. For early access to new shows and updates on the latest exclusive opportunities through Tier 1 people, subscribe to our newsletter by visiting the Fintech Chatter page on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, remember to press follow on your favorite podcast player and please consider leaving us a review. It really does help me in bringing in great guests and help fintech fans like you discover the show. Fintech Chatter is presented by Tier 1 People, leaders in fintech executive search. We'll help you launch, scale, and innovate by delivering world-class talent. And you can find out more at tier1people.com. Until the next episode, stay safe